Officer Andy is a Washington, D.C. cop. He's relaxing at his home in Stafford, Virginia, when he hears a knock at the door. Andy gets up, goes to the door, and opens it. He has no idea who is on the other side. He certainly doesn't think he could be in trouble with the police. He is the police. Andy opens his front door and the interrogation begins. On his porch are some of Stafford County's finest. Andy thinks nothing of the encounter and begins to talk with his colleagues. He has no idea why they're on his front porch, but he really doesn't suspect that he could be in trouble. The deputies arrive because they receive multiple reports of erratic and reckless driving to a vehicle bearing a registration that traces back to Officer Andy. They look up the registered owner's address in their system and they proceed directly to Officer Andy's house. What has good old Officer Andy done wrong already? Well, first of all, he was drinking and driving, so the reports of erratic driving are 100% true. I love defending my clients and protecting their constitutional rights. However, your best defense against a DUI is to never drink and drive. After that, what was Officer Andy's second mistake? He answered the door. Never answer the door for the police unless you called them. I know it might seem like keeping the door closed on the police is somehow rude or maybe even illegal. However, your home is your castle, and the police cannot enter your home unless they have either your permission or if they have a warrant or some kind of exception to the warrant requirement. This includes simply opening the door. The police cannot force you to open your door unless they have some legal authority to do so. And just getting a report of erratic driving and showing up at your house is not a legal reason for the police to force open your door. The one exception to opening your door for the police is if the police are banging on your door and announcing that they have a warrant to either arrest someone who's in the home or to search the premises. And if you don't cooperate, they're going to enter by force usually. In Officer Andy's case, he didn't call his buddies to his house. They simply showed up at his front door, and he should have never answered the door. The Stafford deputies begin to question Andy about his erratic driving, and of course, they claim they smell the odor of alcohol on his breath. They're not wrong, he's been drinking. Andy gets arrested for a misdemeanor DUI, and now his entire police career is on the line. How does this play out in court? Officer Andy's lawyer wants to argue that the police did not have the legal authority to knock on the door in the first place. So he puts on what we call a motion to suppress to try to suppress all evidence that was obtained from the point of the knock onward. If successful, that would mean that the entire case is essentially thrown out. If the deputies had no authority to come onto the porch and knock in the first place, then their observations about Officer Andy's demeanor, their smell of alcohol on his breath, all of that is inadmissible in court, and Officer Andy is going to walk away free. The entire case stands or falls on the knock. But the law is not in Officer Andy's favor. In a previous video, I talk about how the police can walk up your front sidewalk onto your porch and knock on your front door just like any other visitor can to your home. The UPS guy, the FedEx guy. The exception to this is if you have your property clearly marked with no trespassing signs. Think of it this way. If you build a fence and put up no trespassing signs, you're creating essentially a legal moat around the castle that is your home. Now you've made it very clear that people are not invited to come up to your front door and knock like they might be at other homes. This includes the police. Then, if the cops open your front gate and walk up to your front door to knock, they're legally trespassing. And hopefully any evidence they obtain at that point could be thrown out of court, unless they have some other legal authority such as a warrant. Shame on Officer Andy for having no such signs. You think a cop would know how to protect himself from tricks that cops use. Even if Officer Andy answered the door, could he have changed his mind and shut the door? Possibly. In this video from the Lackluster YouTube channel, the police have come to the house for essentially what is a noise complaint over a gas-powered bicycle. The father of the alleged bicyclist opens the door when the police arrive, and he takes a step out to talk with them. But he quickly decides that he wants to discontinue the encounter, and he tries to retreat back into his home and close the door. The police follow him into his home, drag him out, and arrest him. The police in this case did not have any legal authority to order the father to remain with them at that point, and they certainly didn't have any authority to physically enter the home and drag him outside. The police claimed in this case that they didn't need a warrant to go into the home and drag the father back outside. However, they certainly didn't have a warrant. They didn't have his permission, and I don't see any valid exception to the warrant requirement that would apply here. Back to Officer Andy's case. After a 2-hour suppression hearing, the lawyer's motion to suppress the evidence is overruled. The judge ruled that the police did have the legal authority to come onto Officer Andy's porch and knock on his front door and talk with him. If he hadn't answered his front door to an unknown visitor, he would not be facing a DUI conviction and the end of his policing career. Even better, if Officer Andy had a doorbell camera, he would have known the police were coming before they even knocked on the door. This is one reason that I have cameras installed at my home and office. I currently have the Ring Video Doorbell Pro and it works well. It's easy to install and I have a link in the description to the exact model that I bought. I actually plan to upgrade that soon to a dual lens camera from Duhua that integrates with my Blue Iris software that does all the video recording for the other cameras. That setup has the added bonus of not being owned and tracked by Jeff Bezos. It's a little more work to set up, but it definitely adds a lot of privacy to your video system. I'll drop links for that in the description below too. Officer Andy's DUI case is still pending with trial set for a later date. Since they lost the pretrial motion to suppress, it looks like the police evidence from the front porch will be used against him in court, and unfortunately, I suspect that means a likely DUI conviction for Officer Andy. I know it takes time to build fences and put up cameras, so in the meantime, watch this video to learn specific steps about how to handle police at your front door. I'll see you there. And remember, don't talk to the police.